everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Byline with Ben Dennis. As always, going beyond the headlines, making sense of them without spin. I'm excited about my interview this week. It is with Tony Dahbura. He heads the Sports Analytics Research Group at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, the Charm City. Orioles fans out there? He's actually a big baseball guy. We'll get into that in a moment. We dive in on all things AI, how it's been changing, currently changing, and will potentially change the sports world. From tickets to sports betting to the fan experience. Could you tailor your own broadcast to follow your favorite players around? Might that be on the horizon? How networks also might be involved, and the jobs that could be at stake. We've seen Al Michaels recreated a fake Al Michaels, an AI Al Michaels, used in a broadcast over the course of the last year. That's been an example that we've seen how AI might be introduced into the sports world. I'm fascinated by how AI is being deployed on social media and, yes, in the real world. Sports, arguably, a very human experience. A lot of emotions tied to it, not just when we're online, bickering between sports teams and fans. However, I think that AI possibly could revolutionize the way that we experience sports, and so does Tony. The big question is, how might it occur? What might it look like? He acknowledges there are more questions than answers. That's why I'm asking questions to him. He's heavily involved in data analytics and how the tech world might shape the sports world. So we're going to get into that, as well as we do normally, diving into the headlines that I still think have plenty of unanswered questions that could alter your day-to-day life. We head into the Thanksgiving holiday. AAA is predicting a record year. We'll dive in briefly of how many people take to the skies, but apparently increasingly taking to the road. Also, is there a peace plan in the works to get this Russia-Ukraine conflict over? X is also out with a brand new transparency policy practice, if you will, Twitter for the OG social media users here. But you might even be able to see where an account originates. There are some reports that politically leaning accounts that are spewing certain political viewpoints are not American viewpoints, rather, are not originating in the United States of America. And could President Trump urge Congress to come into one room, get a deal done to make sure that healthcare premiums do not rise as many people expect them to do by hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars in 2026. That's because those Obamacare subsidies were not extended by Congress with Republicans in control. Democrats used that as leverage to try and get that resolution during the government shutdown. Well, might the president come out on the record and say this is an issue and we need to get this solved for millions of Americans so that they're not paying more out of pocket? All right, let's get into my interview with Tony Dahbura. I'm excited. And before we do that, I happen to find that there was a connection between us of my hometown, where he has connections rooted as well on the Pennsylvania-Maryland border. He was a part owner of the Hagerstown Suns, which was a minor league team, now under a different name, the Flying Boxcars, not far from where I grew up, and I had attended games as a kid. We made that fun connection, but that is aside from the conversation about AI. Let's get into it. And joining me now on Byline is Tony Dahbura. He heads many hats at Johns Hopkins University, including the Sports Analytics Research Group. You have an extensive career in computer research, data research, and plenty of roles in education at Hopkins specifically. Tony, I have many topics I really want to ask you about, but namely AI. I am fascinated with how it's being deployed, how it is popping up on social media, creating videos that are tailored to me. I find it somewhat wacky, somewhat concerning, but in the sports world too. And I thought that you would be a perfect guy to chime in on this. So thank you for joining Byline.
Thanks, Ben. It's great being here, and I'll do my best to answer at least some of the questions about AI, but there are lots of unanswered questions for sure.
That's precisely why I think this is a prudent conversation to have. Many of us have more questions than answers, it seems like, when I talk to my friends and family. So the first thing I did want to ask, let's go back to the Sports Analytics Research Group at Hopkins. How did it come to be, and how has it evolved to where it is now?
Well, I have a long history being intertwined with baseball, and I was a part owner of a minor league baseball team, the Hagerstown Suns, that were part of the Washington Nationals
I was a Suns fan
organization.
growing up. I grew up in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll share with everyone, this is my 2019 World Series ring.
My dad
So
was gonna be very happy to see this podcast for sure. He's a Nationals diehard fan, so much so that he has an Expos tattoo on his ankle.
wow, that is really, really diehard.
Nonetheless,
Great. So, uh, I did all of my education at Hopkins, including my PhD. Then I left for 30 years and had stints at Bell Labs doing basic research, which was wonderful. I was at MIT running a research center for Motorola. And then I returned to Maryland and was immersed in my family's businesses. And that's when I became part of the Hagerstown Suns. Um, but I played baseball for Hopkins. We were always very analytical. In fact, I remember I dreamed of the day when I could just sit, in the dugout with something like a tablet. We didn't even have, there wasn't such a thing then, and keep score. Those kinds of things. So when I returned to Hopkins, about 13 years ago, naturally, I wanted to do some things in sports analytics. And so one little project became two, became four. Now we have 55 students, undergraduates and master's students, working on about, uh, I think, 23 different sports analytics projects across multiple sports. And we have a number of sponsor organizations, including the Orioles, including the Ravens, the Cleveland Browns. We've done work with the New York Mets, um, a several leagues, and companies that do things like video streaming, and so on. And we do baseball and really now sports scheduling optimization that I've been involved in since the mid '90s. So I've always had an interest in sports analytics.
had a close ear to the ground. I noticed some of the projects that have been posted on the analytic group website, and that some of them were predicting the outcomes of games, whether it be hockey or baseball, or even who's going to be MVP at the end of the year. Found that fascinating. Uh, and I would love for you to get into some of how that came to be for sure, with your students and with your own experience. But the first thing I did want to ask is, how is AI being deployed on the field, on the ice, on the court right now?
Yeah, well, I need to preface this by saying that sports analytics departments are extremely secretive, more so than military government organizations I've worked with, I would have to say.
Make the case for it.
So,
Why is that?
because they don't want the competition to catch on. You know, they want that edge, and every little bit counts. So I'm sure that there are plenty of things that I don't know about, that we don't know about, that are being used. Um, but uh, eh, the other thing is that, from an academic viewpoint, AI has been around for a long time. It's had its ups and downs, and there isn't one thing that is AI. In fact, most of us include statistical techniques that are becoming more sophisticated within the AI family. And so when we talk about statistical analysis, there are all kinds of things that are being done. And, some of those things have led to, in baseball, the shift being banned, um, the diminution of the bunt, that might be coming back a little bit, and, re-examining the value of steals, and all kinds of things like that. So, uh, so I think that it's somewhat evolutionary, in that some of the things you really can't tell, like how much, Chat GPT, and what we call generative AI, um, is being used increasingly, but of course, it's relatively new for all of us. But the thing in that I think sports organizations, like all organizations, have, is we're collecting so much data, which is great, um, but we don't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
So AI is helping to slice and dice the data and separate the signal from the noise, and be able to tell, for instance, front office executives kind of what they really need to know.
I
And
think
we
there
talk. Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. No, no, no. I was just gonna say, I've sent you a list of bullet points of some unanswered questions. To your point, so many questions over answers right now. On this front, the one thing that really stood out to me first was we're all kind of reevaluating how AI might replace the human experience, but b also jobs in the sports world. What do you think some of the first jobs to go might be? Might it be someone who is quite literally keeping the book, in baseball? Could it be announcers? What might be the first to get scrapped?
Yeah, well, you've brought up some really good examples, and I think that some teams in some sports have cut back on their scouting because they're getting really good data and can analyze it. Um, and people are doing experiments in broadcasting, or at least even being able to interpret a video scene. Watching. The computer sees the video, ingests it, and says, "Oh, that's a ground ball to the shortstop. The shortstop threw to the first baseman. That's the second out of the inning." And imitating voices and all. So there's all of that, but what it brings up in sports particularly, and I've been told this by professionals for many years, is there are humans involved. We're talking about humans. The people on the field are humans, the fans are humans. And so we can sort of pick and choose kind of around the corners, but at the core, it's a human experience. I mean, even you could have a machine sitting in the dugout of a baseball game telling players what to do, when to bunt, when to steal, when to put in a pinch hitter, when to pull the pitcher.
Doesn't that make it much
But
less exciting if you're a fan?
yeah, it's not really a human experience anymore. And so I think that's really that's the big thing. In 1,000 years, who knows? But during our lifetimes, I think that, we're pretty close to the point um, where people are discovering, hey, it's a great business idea. In theory, we could do it, but in reality, um, it's not something that is really attractive. People get turned off by it.
Brought this theory up before. I wonder how long it might be, and how far down the road AI gets in our acceptance of it until humans start paying a premium for a human experience. you know, Maybe it's great to talk to somebody on the phone and not a robot. But in terms of sports, is there any way that AI that you are aware of has already possibly influenced the outcome of a game?
Uh, Probably, but I don't think you and I would know about it overtly.
Goes
And
back
I
to this
think
point
it's
of teams and groups keeping things secret right now?
it is, yeah. But I think it's more it's a broader influence. It's being able to figure out. So first of all, in baseball, for instance, pitcher mechanics, and not only AI, but the technology that's really making it possible to measure spin rate and break, and of course speed, and all of these really interesting dynamics of a pitched ball, so that pitchers can have instant feedback. They can be in a warehouse throwing, and there are all these labs now where pitchers can throw and they get feedback, they adjust their grip, they gets a little better. So in a very short amount of time, they're going from throwing a ball that doesn't break to throwing a really amazing breaking ball.
Are we gonna have
So
Nolan Ryans and Shohei Ohtani's just pop up left and right because of this? I mean, even kids, if they're in little league and they're throwing fastballs left and right, they might not
yeah,
be injured, get Tommy Johns as early as they might otherwise.
yeah, well, that's the question, where the human comes in and our human limitations. And if it's possible to be able to become a superior pitcher, for example, and at the same time avoid needing Tommy John surgery or worse. And so it's not clear. Right now, the pendulum is swinging in, throw the ball as hard as you can, put as many revolutions per minute on the pitch. But I think that the pendulum is starting to swing the other way a bit because of all of the injuries Uh, I think that in 2024, major league pitchers spent the equivalent of 93 years on the injured reserve list. Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah. So, that's not good, especially when you're talking about the amount of money that teams are paying for these arms,
Yeah, you
these
don't
brittle
pay for
arms.
the arms to sit on, the bench. I get it.
Right. Right.
Do
So,
you do you think that networks, ESPN, Fox Sports should be a little scared right now, considering that there's some scenario where there's a setup where you possibly could pay for an individualized broadcast where
mhm.
you've got cameras that are solely squared on your team, your players, and some company might step in, have an agreement with the stadium, and can skirt the existing agreement with the networks in order to make this brand new business venture where someone could pay for a subscription to have a tailored experience. Or on the flip side, maybe the networks are already thinking about how they can do this and get ahead of the ball.
Yeah, I think that they should be thinking about it. Um, I don't know about the legal issues, and I suspect that the licensing covers a lot of those things. But I do think that there are opportunities for for enhancing and personalizing the fan experience. Um, and we'll probably be seeing much more even over the next 5 years. Um, some people don't want to know all the statistics and all of the possibilities. Like, you know, this the team has a 73% chance of a running play on the next play for football. Those kinds of things, which people are starting to do, but you'll notice they have separate broadcasts. If you're a nerd and you want to know all the stats, we have a special broadcast for you people. Um, so but what does it mean? How about virtual reality? When you're sitting at a game, and you have on special goggles or glasses, and you can watch, you can see all different things. Will that be attractive? I don't know. It's kind of as a baseball geek, I think I'd like to try it a couple of times at least, but I don't know if there're going to be a lot of swings and misses, to be sure. But technology is letting us do a lot of amazing things right now.
One topic is sticking on the tip of my tongue right now as you talk about chances of somebody winning, of a play being executed a certain way. Man, I can only think about the sports betting world right now. And
Yeah.
there's so many questions surrounding how that is going to be regulated. We know that Congress is behind on regulating big tech, even when Facebook jumped into the game in
Yeah.
terms of user privacy. But right now, making sure that games aren't fixed, that folks aren't skirting existing rules from the league, or
Yeah.
just curious to get your take on the future of the sports betting industry is so long as all of
Yeah.
this data is being collected.
Well, I think we're experiencing some sort of uh, growing pains right now with legalized sports betting in the U.S. And like we've been reading about different schemes, with prop bets and fixing. It's harder to fix a game, but the prop bets, as we've seen, isn't that hard. Although a lot of people are scratching their head for why highly paid athletes would do something like that. But, you're betting on college athletes, you're betting on low tier tennis players that are, and you can read about all of the problems in the tennis world with gambling and fixing. I think that the one thing I've noticed is that the industry is scrambling to regulate itself
Hmm.
before lawmakers feel that they need to step in, whether
What are
it's the
they most
sports books,
concerned
the
about?
leagues, the uh, the sports books and
Yeah, what are they most
the
concerned? I
leagues.
mean, they're looking for a
Well,
profit, right?
right, but the sports books don't want to be overregulated. They would rather not. They're in a really good place right now, I believe. Um, the leagues really have their reputations on the line. Um, and we still talk about the Chicago Black Sox scandal from 1918.
Sure.
So, it's a worst case scenario for sports if fans are thinking, sitting there, watching and thinking that the outcome is predetermined.
As many parents have yelled at a ref or an umpire or groaned at a call, it might have been outside the box or your check
Yeah.
swing wasn't where you had hoped it was going to be. Do you think that I mean, you talk about this is going to evolve. The appetite for how it's deployed is
Yeah.
only going to change, and time will tell. Do we think that maybe there's a consensus in some areas of where AI may best be used? You're not just going to have some umpire who you think is in the pocket of the Reds or a ref who's rooting for the Raiders, not to be alliterative here, and AI might actually call the balls and strikes.
Yeah. Well, you know, we have this ongoing debate about just in the instance of balls and strikes. Um, and so the experiment of where you reach a good balance point. So next year we'll be seeing the challenge, the opportunity for teams to challenge balls and strikes in Major League Baseball. Um, so it's not just having a machine calling the balls and strikes, but it's a challenge, which I think fans are getting used to from a number of sports. It's just become part of the game, and it's been the challenge system has been trialed in spring training in Major League Baseball. Seems to work okay, and so that's I think that's part of that equilibrium that's being built. Um, there is additional technology. I'm always surprised, if you look at, cricket matches, the high level cricket matches, they have all kinds of interesting technology to determine, whether certain events happened. For example, if the I don't remember if it's called a ball in cricket, probably, but if the ball.
It's also foreign to me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, if it grazes the batter, there's technology that shows it's like infrared or something that shows the red, and
A heat
so
signature
they've
or something like
they've
that.
taken and in baseball, that's a big problem. Did it hit the batter? Did it graze his uniform? Did it touch his shoestring?
I mean, think about
Who knows?
soccer. Gone will be the red cards.
Yeah, so it's really a matter of experimenting, um, some trial and error, and where we can fix the things that really negatively impact a sport without taking away too much. And that's just going to be an ongoing process for several years.
In your conversations with coaches, with teams, maybe even other researchers, what are some of the biggest questions that your colleagues, but also folks who are on the field, on the sidelines, in the dugout, on the bench, that they really want to know how they can best deploy some of the research and all of this data that's coming in?
Yeah, I think the big question is really, um, it's a modeling question. It's how do you incorporate things that we can measure and compile versus the things that we can't, or the things that we don't realize should be compiled. Um, for example, we may know all of the statistics of a relief pitcher in baseball, and how they do against other hitters, and how they do at night, and natural turf, and East Coast, West Coast, all of those things. But we don't know the status of their relationship, or some other personal thing. And that's the big enigma, because
Hmm.
you could pay thousands of people and have the best AI models or whatever other statistical models you choose, and there are still things that you just won't know unless you incorporate the human element. And so that's where, understanding the limitations of what we can do with AI and related technologies, I think is one of the biggest challenges. And there are going to be limits, there are going to be barriers. We don't know what they are, but they're certainly there. And there's only so much you can do, again, because of that human element. Um, the tackler was distracted or something and missed the tackle. It could be any number of things that
Sure.
you can't incorporate into your model, and therefore your ability to predict outcomes, your ability to make your team better, your ability to win games has some limitation somewhere.
How are you collecting data at Hopkins right now? Obviously, you want to keep some things close to the lapel. I understand that. But for someone who's curious about it, are you recording certain games and sending it into a computer to identify certain plays or a frequency of injuries? What's that look like?
Well, in some instances, our sponsors provide data to us under non-disclosure, so we can use the data. We can generalize it, but we just can't put the raw data out there for people. So that's great to have. In other cases, there are repositories online, for instance, for soccer, where which is amazing, where they now have uh, positions, the location of all of the players uh, throughout the game for certain games. And if you pay for the data, you can get much more. But for academic research, we have a fair amount of data available. I kind of wish we had more for, that was publicly available for Major League Baseball. We actually used to have more, and they've pulled back some of it for whatever reason. But it's possible to get a reasonable amount of data out there from publicly available sites.
Are you aware of any teams, professional sports teams, that are utilizing AI or a wave of data in order to land contracts
For
or
players,
or
are you talking?
scout as well? You had mentioned scout
Yeah,
players.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. So for one thing, negotiating contracts is part art, part science, and there are many types of people involved: legal, financial, sports people, and so on. Even economists. I mean, the amount of money that we're talking about is tremendous. So there's just a lot of science that goes into it, um, and AI can be part of that. Um, so, and just like it's not limited to sports. It's any other kind of contract negotiation. I think that AI is has huge potential, to the point that if you and I one day were negotiating a contract, we'll just say, "Hey, have your AI talk to my AI. We'll see what they come up with." And that's
They'll speak in beeps back to one another. I've seen videos of on TikTok where they speak in their own language right now, these
that's
AI
right.
models.
That's right.
I want to get you out here. I know you have a hard out at 3 o'clock. One of the biggest questions I have for you right now: how do you think AI might show the biggest business upside for leagues?
That's a great question. I don't think that there's a single good answer. I think just like other industries, I think that AI is going to be applied in different ways in different places with different degrees of impact, pretty much throughout the organization. But I do think that there are opportunities. I saw it when I was involved in the minor leagues and with our scheduling work. There are opportunities um, for increasing revenue opportunities. For one, it's a business, so just in those terms, knowing your customers, knowing what they're into, knowing what they would be more likely to pay for. I think that AI can be a tremendous tool for maximizing revenue across the board. And then, of course, the operationally, the analytics teams are going to be very busy over the next many years. In fact, right now, one thing that's happening is they're kind of swamped with so many people approaching them with different types of systems. Oh, I have a system to sell you to do this. I have a system that can do that. And it's kind of overwhelming. So they'll sort it out and they'll figure out which ones can help them. And I think that, the other interesting thing that people like to think about is that probably teams will have temporary advantages, but then other teams will figure it out, and then we'll get back to that balance point. So that's going to be what the likely scenario for the next several years.
Day by day, we'll take it game by game and match by match. Tony, I really appreciate your
Exactly.
time, and I have not been able to visit the new Flying Boxcar Stadium in Hagerstown yet. Have you?
You should check it out. Yeah, it's wonderful, amazing
The
experience right
backdrop
in
is
downtown.
gorgeous right in the heart of downtown, so I'm dying to
Yes.
get there.
You should check it out. Let me know. We'll go for a game.
Fair enough. I'm all in.
All
Thank you,
right,
Tony.
then.
I appreciate your time. Take it
My
easy.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right, more headlines to look out for this week. President Trump might urge Congress to get a deal done to avoid a healthcare headache for many people, millions of folks across this country, and possibly resolve issues that came about because Obamacare tax credits to reduce the cost of health insurance premiums for people were not extended as Republicans control the United States House of Representatives and the United States Senate. Some reporting as we enter the work week that the president might urge Congress to get a deal done, acknowledging that this is an issue. We'll keep an eye on this for certain. X has launched a brand new transparency policy that might be able to let you pinpoint where an account is originating from. Democratic United States Senator Mark Warner, who was the former chair of the United States Senate Intelligence Committee, came out on X and said, "This is a great policy." Some reporting also indicated that there are accounts from across the world, nowhere near the United States, that are publishing comments that are certainly controversial online and folks are getting engaged in. Sure, there are plenty of bots out there online, but this might be a tool for consumers to use to at least figure out who's behind the keys, who's behind the phone, putting out tweets, messages, a lot of eyes on big tech companies, as you just heard in my conversation with Tony as well, in order to increase transparency. Could there be movement to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine? Initially, there were reports of a peace plan between the two countries. However, there is suspicion out there that the deal that the United States had announced, President Trump had referenced on social media, was drawn up solely by the Russians. A lot of questions about if this so-called deal originated in Moscow and was not something that was brokered between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russian President Vladimir Putin and their diplomatic aides. Republicans and Democrats scratching their heads whether this was something that the two countries came together on. However, over the weekend, the United States, Russia, Ukraine apparently have started to get closer to a deal. We will see if the drones will stop flying overhead. People will stop being killed. Just a couple of weeks ago, President Trump acknowledged that he thought that Ukraine could not only win the war, but also get back territory that they had lost throughout this conflict. And that alleged peace plan that we're talking about here suggested that Ukraine possibly give away some territory and scale back their military, their army, in order to end this war. Well, that certainly is counter narrative to what the president had thought could get done just a couple of weeks ago. We will have to see what comes out of the State Department and what comes out of the White House. And finally, before we go, we're going to take a load off, see some family and friends, hopefully avoid any conversations or debate about politics around the Thanksgiving holiday. Enjoy the turkey. Have some extra mashed potatoes. Why not? Have a cheat day. You don't need to go to the gym and burn it off. It's Thanksgiving after all. Many people are going to be taken to the road, to the skies. AAA says folks increasingly will be getting behind the wheel. Flyers also, apparently, will see a record number of people getting on planes. The best time to travel, earlier rather than later. Same goes if you're booking a last-minute flight. I know that a lot of us will be taking some time off. I will be open to your ideas about future one-on-one conversations. Actually, I really want to hear them. So send me a DM, no doubt, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. You know where to find me. There'll be information in the bio of this podcast, too, wherever you find it. And let's chat, because I'm hoping to get you some answers to some head scratchers out there. Several different topics we have already gotten into here on Byline. So with that, have a very happy Thanksgiving holiday. Take it easy and hopefully catch up on some sleep after you've had plenty of turkey, even if you're sleeping through football. See you later.